Hi guys, Kevin Ellis Jr. here with the Apex Racing Academy with this track guide from Mosport and the Porsche Cup car. So guys, as we come down towards turn 1 then, obviously this track's a lot about blind corners and kind of blind crests and stuff, so it's a little bit difficult to be consistent around here, so hopefully this track guide will obviously help with that. So as you're coming down towards turn 1, obviously turn 1's completely blind, you can't actually see the apex, so what you need to kind of do is begin to turn in sort of before you can actually see the corner. Obviously use the inside wall as a bit of a guide. You've got that as a bit of help, but as I'm coming up over this crest, you can see I'm just lifting off the power and getting onto the brakes. Just as I get to these sort of tyre marks here, you can see just the start of where these start to kind of show up, and this here is basically what I'm using as a bit of a brake marker. It's just the start of these tyre marks right here. You see already the application of brakes is beginning to come in now, and from 5th down into 4th, coming really tight. Keep it as tight to the inside as you can the whole way around. And then once you come past the start of this curb on the inside, this is going to be your throttle pickup point for the most part. On this specific lap, I drove it in quite deep, so you're going to see it's quite a late throttle pickup in comparison. But then there's a massive bump right around here, right in the middle of the corner. Or sorry, actually, I had to that back. It's right as the curb ends, as well as a big massive drop off that curb, and you want to kind of use that as your full throttle pickup point. So start picking up the throttle shortly after you pass the start of this curb, so you can see we pass it, then we bring in the throttle, and by the time we get to the end of this curb here and drop off the end of it, just get to full throttle. If you're nice and tight to the inside and your right hand side tyres are on that curb and you've got the right line, then as you can see it should be easy flat on the exit turn 1 with no issues. Turn 2 again, blind, not really many brake markers at all into here. All I was really doing here is as I'm coming up over the top of this crest right here, I was just beginning to get onto the brakes. There really wasn't any sort of brake marker that I could use. There's a tiny little black mark on the track which you can maybe see here on the recording. As I come up over the crest, you know, I see that, and then I start to get on the brakes just shortly after it. Into here, it's going to be a diamond. It's obviously a very long downhill left-hander, so you want to diamond this corner or double apex the corner, which you can see here. We're going to get right across up against the grass on the left hand side, and you can see how early we're going to pick up throttle here as well. You can see we're bringing it in all the way back here, so ideally you even want to pick up throttle a little bit earlier as well. I've done it a little bit earlier in one of the laps and gained a lot of time, so it's all about braking as you come up over the crest, trailing the whole way in, and then once you get to roughly this point here, you want to start thinking about getting back to throttle, which you can see here. Here we're a little bit wide in the middle of the corner. You do want to be just a little bit tighter than this. You don't want to be up against the white line, but you do want to be maybe half a car's width tighter to the inside. You can see I have a small lift in the middle of the corner there, and you can see we're maybe a tyre width wide just at the exit there. That leads us out to the curb on the outside, which you don't really want to do. You would do, again, you want to be maybe a tyre width to the left the whole way through here and exit, but we did actually carry generally pretty good speed on this lap, so the line just wasn't quite optimal. As we're coming towards turn 3 then, this was a tiny mistake on this lap. So as we come in here, you can see these 2 tyre marks here. There's sort of 2 tyre marks that go off to the left. Braking as we get over the top of them, you can see how we're quite far to the right when we're braking. Ideally do want to be a bit more central or a bit more far to the left when you start getting onto the brakes, but it was okay. We braked on those tyre marks down into 3rd gear. And you'll see here we just kind of brushed the inside curb, and this was the mistake. I could have maybe carried just a little bit more speed. You see I'm at 136 kph here, probably could have been 138, 139, and this wouldn't have happened. So just slightly brushed the curb on the inside, which then caused the inside rear wheel to spin up. But again, generally the speed carried was okay. We lost maybe half a tenth with that small mistake there. But generally that's what you want to do, is brake on the 2 tyre marks, track out to the left, bring it in 3rd gear, and then pick up the throttle as soon as you can. As you come down over the crest, this is a big commitment corner. You want to drive this in as deep as possible. You don't want to lift off early, brake, and then get back to throttle like down here. You want to just drive it in flat under the bridge, flat over the crest, and then start gradually lifting off. As you see this little grass patch come into shot, you're going to see there's the grass patch come into view. I'm coming off the throttle very slightly, and then once we get past the end of this here, lifting completely out of it, a little dab of brake just to keep the thing tight to the inside. See, nice and bumpy part of the track here, and then as we get past the end of that curb there, there's just another little bit of throttle just to pick up again, just to keep the car rotating and keep the speed up. What you generally want to do as well is try and keep your car over this seam on the left hand side. You don't want to come down the hill and track out and end up over here somewhere and trying to take the corner from here. You do want to generally try and open this up as much as you can. You don't necessarily need to be up against the grass on the left, because then you might sacrifice a little bit too much speed in the downhill left. So the sort of happy medium is to drive it down the downhill left and aim for this seam right here, which you can see as we're braking, we're bringing it across, down into fourth, down into third. And as we turn in to get up the hill, I'm going to drop a lot of the brake out of it here, which you can see, very little brake, down into second now, and then I'm going to straighten out, aim for the outside curb. You can see it coming to shot there, still trailing ever so slightly, and then right as you see this big tarmac patch right here that comes around to the right, this is going to be your throttle pickup point. So as you come around here, looking for the start of that, you go over it, bring the throttle in nice and early, obviously a long back straight, nice and patient on it. Don't get to full throttle before you get to that curb on the right hand side. You want to sort of feed the power in as you come through the corner, and then feel free to make use of this on the exit. Shouldn't lose too much time from the car bouncing at all. If anything, the extra speed that you carry out the corner will sort of nullify that, and obviously you shouldn't get off track for that either, unless you're way off into the grass. So down that straight, then you're obviously up into 6th gear now, the fastest part of the track. Then you're coming to this right hander here, which is all about obviously carrying the speed into the corner. This is a really satisfying part of the track. This is my favourite part of the track. It's got a really nice flow to it. It's really satisfying when you hit it nice, and the track's got a nice amount of grip here as well, to where you can really throw the car in pretty deep. So as we're coming in, you can see again there's these very faint tyre marks right here that you can see, sort of in line with this one here, right across there. Coming over the top of that, we're on the brakes, aiming for the start of this curb here, which you can see come to shot now. We hit that, we're down into 4th gear now at this point, and again similar to turn 2, this is going to be a small diamond. You can see we sort of wash out mid corner and then start to bring it back in, and you can see how early we're bringing power back into this. It's before we even get to this curb on the inside here on the right. Start bringing the power in up to 100% throttle here. I picked up just a little bit too early, so I had a little bit of a lift just to keep the car tight to the right hand side. Back to full throttle again, and then you can see another sort of lot of tyre marks just on the inside here. This sort of grouping here, this right here is just before you get to them. You can see I'm getting onto the brakes. Going to be a downshift into 3rd now, just to get us through this left hander. And again, you want to bring it in nice and tight. Get the right hand side tyres on this concrete patch, or this tarmac patch. You see how nice and tight we are to the apex. Bringing the throttle in just before we get to the end of the curb, which you can see there. And again, keep it nice and tight to the left. Don't be picking up throttle even earlier and washing out to over here. You want to try and keep it on this seam. And you can see we're getting just to full throttle, bringing it across to the left, and then braking just before we get to this tyre mark right around here. Again, we slightly underdrove this. We could have braked marginally later there. So rather than braking, like here, it's more a little bit closer to up here. So maybe 4 or 5 meters early on the brakes here. But it's okay, as we bring it in, keeping it as wide as possible and picking up throttle as early as possible. You can see it's just begin to bring some throttle into it here. Again, there's no real obvious marks in the track or curbs and stuff that you can use for this. But obviously this is the apex right here. You don't want to get back to throttle before you get to that apex. Powering through the apex up to 100% throttle. A little bit of a slide on the exit as the life of your tyre wants to give out. Use the curb up to the grass on the exit, and then across the line. So with that, guys, that is a lap on Mosport. It's a very short lap. It's a really intense and high speed lap. A lot of precision, a lot of accuracy required, a lot of trust in the car. Obviously, as I said at the start, there's a lot of really blind crests and blind corners and stuff, and a lot of undulation changes that really do make things a bit more difficult. Downhill braking for turn 1, downhill for turn 2, then uphill for Moss corner, the double right before the back straight. So yeah, there's a lot of things to kind of take in and keep in mind during your races. But as always, guys, any kind of questions, Apex Racing Academy Discord is where you can find me. But with that, guys, the best of luck in your races this week, and we'll catch you back on the channel for another tutorial next week.